Good afternoon. So I guess this will begin our eighth lecture this week. And so, how are you doing this week, Sam?
I'm doing good. Finished my essay or my compare and contrast essay yesterday. I'm just reviewing it over.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So the comparison contrast essay, I'm going to go over the transition words. We're getting fewer and fewer people now because there are no more quizzes. So people don't have to study for or prepare for the quiz anymore. So in this lecture, I'm just going to talk about transition words and how you can use transition words to make your ideas flow better from sentence to sentence and paragraph to paragraph. So in your essay, you can use simple transition words like first, second, third for your reasons. And then in your body paragraphs, you can use about 2 or 3 transition words per paragraph in order to make your paragraph flow better. So I'll go over the different kinds of transition words so that you don't always repeat yourself and always use but all the time, so all the time, or yet all the time, or and all the time. And so this should be not very long, but hopefully you'll enjoy it. It's very easy compared to the quiz. So without any further ado, I'll start sharing my transition words. So before I get into the transition words, how are you doing on the week 8 rough draft assignment?
I'm finished it. I'm just making sure everything's like I'm just looking over it, making sure everything's good before I submit it.
Did you do the worksheet, or did you write an actual rough draft with 5 paragraphs? You can do
With 5 paragraphs, I did the whole thing.
Okay, you could do either one. So I tell students that for the week 8 assignment, you could either fill out the week 8 assignment worksheet or write the 5 paragraphs. So for the people who are doing the week 8 worksheet, so for the thesis statement, you need to have a topic: fruits are better than vegetables. So that would be the opinion because of their cost, nutrition, and taste. And so here you have noun, noun, and noun. So that's parallel structure. That's another way in which you can write a thesis statement. Then the cost, nutrition, and taste becomes the 3 subpoints: cost, nutrition, and taste. Those will become the body paragraphs. And then the body paragraphs have to match cost, nutrition, and taste. Okay, so this one would be nutrition. Then this would be your topic sentence: fruits are cheaper than vegetables. So that would be reason number 1. Then you're going to have subpoints in which you elaborate on apples, pears, and strawberries are all cheaper than vegetables. And then you're going to write fruits taste better than vegetables. And then this would be your topic sentence. And then you have to have your supporting sentences to support taste. So why do the fruits taste better than vegetables? Because the fruits have natural sugars. They can combine fruits with chocolate, and you can combine fruits with caramel. Then the last reason why fruits are better than vegetables is that fruits have more nutritional value than vegetables. And then you give examples of how fruits have more nutritional value because of the vitamin C, antioxidants, and the vitamin A. And then you have your thesis. You repeat. Then for your conclusion, you repeat the thesis statement as the first sentence of the last paragraph, and then you summarize the main points of your essay without adding anything new. So that pretty much summarizes your worksheet. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think I need to uh, do my thesis and my conclusion for the first, having the same. Yeah, because I need to work on that one. Okay, so I'll work
Yeah.
on that one after the class.
Yeah, the thesis is usually the first sentence of the last paragraph, and it is the last sentence of the first paragraph. So in your intro, before you write your thesis, you're going to have a 5 sentence background of why you chose the thesis, and then you're going to have a hook. So that becomes your introduction paragraph, where you have a hook, 5 background sentences, and then you write your thesis statement last. And so that's kind of like a upside down triangle. I call it a funnel introduction paragraph. So if you want to Google more about introduction paragraphs, you can Google funnel introduction paragraph. And then here, for the summary conclusion, that's what it's called, a summary conclusion paragraph, that's more like a triangle. And so you start from something specific and you become more general, whereas for your introduction, you start with something general and you end up specific. And in both ways, it is this thesis statement that's always the thing that's the tip of the triangle, because that's what's specific, because the thesis statement is the main idea of your essay. So that's it for week 8. It's really easy. And then for essay 2, we're all doing a comparison contrast essay where you compare two similar things. 2 musicians, 2 cities, 2 fruits, 2 vegetables, 2 things that are similar. You would not want to compare a person with a dog, for instance. That's too dissimilar. So it has to be different dog breeds or different cities. So it has to have some similarity. And so here are some ways. Now I'm going to start with, and you can either write the block method or use the alternate method for your comparison contrast essay. Which one are you going to use, the block or the alternate method?
Block.
The block method. Oh, so you're going to have the 4 paragraphs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so each of the body paragraphs must have the 3 reasons within it. So let's say, for example, you're going to do the body paragraph. So let's say, let me see if I want to do it like this. So fruits. Oh, what fruits? Okay, fruits are better than vegetables because of the taste, cost, and nutrition. Right, so that's the thesis. Paragraph 2 would be about fruits, and then you're going to talk about taste, cost, and nutrition. In other words, fruits taste really good. You can combine it with chocolate. They don't cost very much. They're very nutritional because they have vitamin C, that sort of thing. In other words, a kind of summary of, and then for paragraph 3, you would write vegetables, but you're going to write it in the same order: taste, cost, nutrition. So same order as the vegetables. Then you would say, well, vegetables don't taste as well as fruits because you can't combine them with caramel, and then fruits are more expensive. Vegetables are more expensive than fruits, so vegetables are not as fun to buy, and so on and so forth. So you have to have the taste, cost, nutrition, and then fruits would be taste, cost, and nutrition if you use the block method. Usually I tell my students, if you use the block method, you better know how to be concise. Or if you tend to talk a lot, then you use the 5-paragraph essay structure, which would be the alternate method. And you still have to make sure that each paragraph is 5 to 7 sentences. You still don't want to have a huge paragraph. So it's true that I think in the block method you get to write less, but you still have to have the same punch and still deliver the same information as if you were using the longer method, the alternate method. And then paragraph 4 would be your conclusion. And you still have to have the thesis statement as the last sentence of the first paragraph and the first sentence of the last paragraph. So that stays the same, you see. So does this help you with your essay?
Yes, I might need to work on it a little bit more, or I might switch it to the 5-paragraph one.
Okay, well, either way, if you're going to do the alternate method, so alternate method would then be paragraph 2 would be, this you're familiar with, because we did that for paragraph 4 would be nutrition. And then here you would have fruits versus vegetables. And then it would be the same, fruits versus vegetables, cost, and then fruits versus taste, cost, and then nutrition, fruits versus vegetables, and then paragraph Paragraph 5, conclusion. And then of course both of them have the same thesis statement. Fruits are better than vegetables because of the taste, cost, and nutrition. So it's up to you which method fits you best. And also for the students who are watching this, when you do your week 8 assignment, you can either write the 4 paragraphs with the block method, or you can have your alternate method, or you can just fill out the worksheet. Okay, so either one, as long as you show me the structure of what you're going to write for your final draft. So we're going to be doing week 7, week 8, we're working on essay 2, then we're going to skip 9 and 10, and then in week 11 and 12, we'll come back to this. So that's basically what we're going to do. So then you take a break from this for a little while. So let me continue with, all right, so when we write a comparison contrast essay, you can either use a prepositional phrase, you can either use a coordinating conjunction, you can use a transition word, or you can use a subordinating conjunction. All of these are different ways in which you can express contrast. So in contrast to Mary's wealth, John is poor. So in contrast to Mary's wealth, this is a transitional phrase. And so here you have a prepositional phrase in contrast, because a phrase is a group of words with no subject and verb. And a phrase is a group of words, did I just say that wrong? Clause. Okay, a phrase is a group of words, so I'll write this out. So a phrase is a group of words with no subject and no verb. A clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. Both of them are sentence fragments. They cannot stand alone. Okay, so when you can have either a dependent clause, actually you can have a dependent clause which cannot stand alone, or you can have an independent clause which can stand alone. And then there are many different kinds of phrases. So anyway, so in contrast to Mary's wealth, John is poor. Or you can have a coordinating conjunction. Mary is rich, but John is poor. Or you could have a transition word. Mary is rich, semicolon, however, John is poor. Or you can have a complex sentence with a subordinating conjunction. While Mary is rich, John is poor. So even if you forget the rest of this lecture, if you could just memorize these 4 sentences, that's it, then you know different ways of expressing contrast. Instead of simply saying but, okay? My students use but every time whenever they want to say contrast. So instead of that, you could have in contrast to, however, or while. Okay, so you can try to remember that. So here are some transition words. What are transition words? Another way of saying transition words are conjunctive adverbs or adverbial conjunctions. So adverbs tell when, where, and how, to what extent an action verb is done. Conjunctive adverbs or transition words show addition, comparison, contrast, example, summary, and time sequence by linking sentences and paragraphs. Adverbial conjunctions or transition words add depth and coherence to a text. They're a way in which you can have your ideas come together. You can have your ideas as a contrast, a comparison, or supporting an idea. Adverbs are words that end in ly. And so the question is, when do we use commas with conjunctive adverbs? Well, basically, whenever you have a transition word, you always have to place a comma after the transition word. Then before the transition word, you either have a semicolon or a period. That depends. If you want your sentences to flow together, you use a semicolon. If you want the reader to complete that action, you put a period. So that's up to the that's up to the writer. Yeah. So here are some examples of transition words that I put into your announcements. A lot of people don't bother reading their announcements, but anyway, so you can have transition words of addition. These are all different ways of saying and. Okay, so instead of saying John ate steak and Mary ate a salad. So instead of saying and, you would say John ate steak, semicolon, moreover, Mary ate salad. Moreover, furthermore, also, as well as, in addition, not only John ate steak, but also Mary ate salad. In addition to John eating steak, Mary ate salad, or something like that. So all of these are different ways of saying and. Or you can have contrast, different ways of saying but. Unlike Mary, John ate steak. John ate steak, nevertheless, Mary ate salad. So all of these are different ways of saying but. John ate steak, conversely, Mary ate salad, or something. Differing from John, Mary ate salad, or something like that. So all of these are different ways of saying but. And these are different ways of saying then. Instead of saying then, you could say first, second, third, fourth, finally, subsequently, above all. This one tells time. So you could use first, second, and third. Your first, fruits taste better. Second, fruits have more nutrition. Third, fruits cost less or something than vegetables. So you can tie your ideas together with first, second, and third, using that to tie your body paragraphs together. So that's the easiest way to use transition words of, these are also known as transition words of chronology, transition words of sequence, transition words of order. There's so many different names. Same thing with this one. It's known as transition words of contrast, transition words of opposition, that sort of thing. So everything has other names based on, and so here, so transition words gives writing coherence. It allows the readers to follow your ideas or arguments from one point to the next. And so examples of transition words include coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, and conjunctive adverbs. So when we transition from one paragraph to another, we can use these transition words. Cats are easier than dogs. Cats are better than dogs because cats are more independent, cats do not bark, and cats are easier to maintain. And so here I had the first, cats are more independent. Second, cats do not bark. And as you go from one paragraph to another, you can use first, second, and third chronology words. It's also known as transition words of time. So that's another way of doing it. So here are the many different transition words of similarity. In other words, something that's the same. So New Orleans attracts many tourists. In the same way, San Francisco attracts many tourists. And so you could say in the same way, similarly, like, just like, likewise, in the same manner, by the same token. So when you have two sentences, this is very similar to transition words of addition, okay? New Orleans attracts many tourists. In addition, San Francisco also attracts many tourists. So this is very similar to transition words of addition, okay? Different ways of saying, I think this could also be different ways of saying and off the top of my head, except for the like ones. And then here, furthermore, moreover, likewise, in addition, Ecuador, here's another one. Also known as additive transition words. Ecuador ships out a lot of bananas, and it is an exporter of oil. So here, different ways of saying and. Ecuador ships out a lot of bananas. Furthermore, it is an exporter of oil. Moreover, it is an exporter of oil. Likewise, it is an exporter of oil. In addition, it is an exporter of oil. Also, it is an exporter of oil. So all of these are different ways of saying what?
Like or and.
And, yes. And then here, you have different ways of saying but. So then I went over Mary is rich, but, however, in contrast, John is poor. In contrast to John, Mary is rich. Mary is rich. Conversely, John is poor. On the contrary, on the one hand, Mary is rich. On the other hand, John is poor. Mary is rich. On the other end of the spectrum, John is poor. Unlike Mary, who is rich, John is poor. Mary is rich. Similarly, John is poor. Mary's wealth differs from John's poverty. Here is a little bit different because you change both of them to nouns. A clear difference between the two is Mary's wealth and John's poverty. You can tell that these two are more formal English than up there, because nobody really talks. Have you ever heard people talk like Mary's wealth differs from John's poverty? No. So this is more formal English. And also a clear difference between the two. That's also formal written English. Although Mary is poor, John is rich. That's not what it says. Although Mary is rich, John is poor, and even though. So these would be all complex sentences. So when you have these two, it's like two equal sentences, but here you have although Mary is rich. That's a dependent clause. So that's not as important. So when the reader reads it, she's reading it as although Mary is rich, John is poor. So you're putting more emphasis on the independent clause when you use a subordinating conjunction. In other words, you want the reader to not pay too much attention to the fact that Mary is rich. You want to emphasize, for some reason, John is poor. Even though Mary is rich, John is poor. However, if I use this one, this becomes equal. Mary is rich, similarly, John is poor. Do you see how the different ways you can control how your reader reads the sentence? That's all within your power as the writer. If you know your sentence structure. This is also equal. Mary is rich. On the other end of the spectrum, John is poor. Unlike Mary, who is rich, John is poor. All of the others are all the same. If you want your reader to read the sentences with equal significance, then you use the others. But if you want your reader to skip through one of the sentences and then emphasize the other sentence, then you use a subordinating conjunction. You use a complex sentence. So that's up to you. That's why knowing your sentence structure gives you, the writer, power over your reader. You control how your reader feels. So this is called the, appeal to emotion, pathos. Yeah, when you study ethos, pathos, logos. I do that in my other. And then here, Mary is rich while John is poor. So this is not that important. Mary is rich while John is poor. See? So if you want the reader, for some reason, that's not as so important, but the fact that Mary is rich is really important, then you would use. So it all depends on what you want to emphasize. Here you got fanboys. So fanboys, that's the Y in fanboys. Mary is rich, yet John is poor. Mary is rich, nevertheless. So this has a slight emphasis on this. So Mary is rich, nevertheless, John is poor. So this also has somewhat of an emphasis. Unlike Mary, John is poor. Compared to Mary's wealth, John is very poor. So the other two, it's all the same. So far so good. Different ways of saying but and different ways of saying and. And so here you have transition words, and then also your transition words can occur in simple sentences, complex sentences, and compound sentences. And then here, if it's in a simple sentence, then you have similar to New Orleans, and you always have to have a comma after the introductory phrase. So similar to New Orleans, comma, San Francisco, this would be a simple sentence. Just like New Orleans, comma, San Francisco attracts many tourists. And then here, different from Mary, comma, John is poor. So always be aware that you always have to have a comma after your introductory phrase. And then here, unlike adulthood, childhood is filled with free, fun time and no responsibilities. So I have a lot of students who are going to be writing their essays about adulthood versus childhood. And I always get as a child, as a child, as a child, as an adult, as an adult, as an adult. And I keep telling those students, no. That's how I can tell if a student has actually watched my Zoom videos or not. If that person keeps writing as, then I know that person has not even bothered to watch my Zoom or even bothered to read the lecture notes. If a student knows how to make their sentences very varied, then I know, okay, that student gets a better grade, has read my Zooms and done. The essay sounds better, because you don't keep saying as a. So unlike adulthood, childhood is filled with free time. In contrast to adulthood, childhood is filled with free time. childhood is better than adulthood because, or contrary to adulthood, childhood is filled with free time. And so that's how I test students to see if they actually bother to watch my Zooms, is if any of them use these instead of as a. So if they didn't watch this, they don't know that I said this. So there you go. And then, of course, they get a lower grade because then their essays sound so redundant. But, and. So. You sound like you're second grade. If you're in second grade and you do that, that's understandable. You don't know, even if you're a native speaker, you don't know much English yet. But as you get older, you guys are all adults, you're expected to know all of this already. So contrary, or if you don't know it, you watch the video. That's the whole point of the video, so you catch up to everybody, to all the other adults who already know this. So contrary to Mary, John is poor, despite Mary's wealth. So these are all simple sentences in which you have a prepositional or a phrase, and then you have a independent clause. Then you can have transition words in compound sentences. That's just fanboys. Fanboys, John is poor, and then you have to make sure that if you have fanboys, that you always have a comma before but, yet, so, nor, so, yet. If you have a transition word, you could either have a comma, a semicolon before it, or a period, and then you always have to have a comma. And so I said the difference is that if you want your reader to just stop, Ecuador ships out a lot of bananas. Stop. In addition, it is an exporter of oil. So that means it's two different sentences. Or if you want your reader to just read on, when you have a semicolon, that is a shortcut for and. So if you want your reader to say, Ecuador ships out a lot of bananas, moreover, it is an exporter of oil. That means these two sentences are connected together, and you want the reader to read it in a connected fashion. So once again, your punctuation determines how your reader reads the sentence. So once again, you, the writer, you have the power to control how your reader feels, even right down to the punctuation. That's why punctuation is so important, besides looking right, is you determine the speed at which they read your paper. So New Orleans, so this is more about everything being the same, and we did this. And then here you have compound sentences. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that transition words occur in simple sentences, compound sentences, and in complex sentences. So here, although Mary is rich, John is poor. And so these are all different ways of saying but. And so I usually start out my class with what is the difference between all of these sentences? So now you tell me, what is the difference in meaning between all of these sentences? Now that we've gone over it.
The emphasis?
Yeah, what did you learn about the difference between all of these sentences?
Well, the difference.
Yeah, you got it right, the emphasis. Yeah, that's one of them. Although Mary is rich, John is poor. Mary is rich, however, John is poor. And if I put a period there, Mary is rich, I stop, however, John is poor. But you always have to have a comma after the transition word. You don't need to have a comma after fanboys. Always before. Am I answering the question for you? I forgot.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I shouldn't be doing your work for you. Okay. So have you learned a lot about how there's different ways of saying but and?
Yes, I'm probably going to rework a little bit on my essay too.
Yeah, you always have to check. First, you make sure that you have a good essay structure. In other words, you have if you're using block, you have the nutrition, cost, and whatever in one paragraph, then nutrition, cost, and whatever in the third paragraph. So first you check out your essay structure is okay. After you make sure your essay structure is okay, then you focus on sentence variety like this. Then after you make sure you have lots of sentence variety, you make sure that you have your APA source. You got to have at least one APA source for this paper, like an in-text citation. So what's your topic?
Star Wars versus Star Trek. How do I?
Oh, so you would look up, you would put into Google why Star Trek is better than Star Wars. That's it, okay? Into the search engine, press submit, and then you're going to get a gazillion articles about other people's opinions about why they think Star Trek is better than Star Wars. And then you would find at least one in-text citation in order to make your paper more credible. And so, the designer of the class is the one who wrote it, so that's why it's required. So you would have to, and none of the teachers know who the designer was.
And should I integrate it to my structure paragraph or to my specific?
And when you write the in-text citation, you're going to use pie structure. Did I teach you pie structure already?
Can't remember right now.
Okay, so when you do your in-text citation, you have the main point from the thesis. That would be Star Trek, whatever the reason was. Star Trek is better than Star Wars because everybody is all united. Or let's pretend that's the main topic. That's the thesis. That's a topic sentence. That's nice. Then you have your one in-text citation. So I stands for in-text citation. And so then you would write most people, or 70% of people, let's use that, pretend, 70% of millennials love Star Trek over Star Wars because of Star Trek optimistic outlook on the future. Okay, let's say you got that.
They kind of get something like that.
Yeah, and then you would write. Then you have to write in something like Smith, the author's name. Then you write in the date, and then if it exists, a page 22. Okay, and so then once you have your in-text citation, then you have E stands for explanation of that in-text citation in 5 sentences. So that means you don't have to write any more in-text citations. You're going to start paraphrasing. You're going to say, well, most people, millennials are people who are who were born between 19 something to 2000 something, and most of those millennials love Star Trek because Gene Roddenberry's optimistic outlook on the future, where all of humanity has come together and it's a time with no war, and so that humanity can then focus on space exploration or something like that. In other words, you write 5 sentences about what this is, and then after you write your 5 sentences, then you move on to the next paragraph, and then the next paragraph could also have a different in-text citation, and then you do the same pie structure again and again and again. So you should have about, if you want, you could have as many as 3 in-text citations in your entire 5-paragraph essay. So that's known as pie structure. I teach this because a lot of students think that they have to fill the entire essay with one statistic after another statistic, and what happens when you do that is when you have Turnitin, you get a large plagiarism score. You want your plagiarism score to be very little. So that's why when you take out from other sources, you just do only one. You only do one, and that way the most of your essay becomes your original thinking. Does that make sense?
Yes. So let's say I pick a quote from the show itself. I should put the episode or something like that.
I can look that up, but yeah, pretty much you would look up. I could look that up for you to see what it is if it's from an episode. Yeah, I remember one Star Trek. It was Love is Sacrifice. I remember the alien was holding this human in its aura, and the human felt trapped. But and Captain Kirk, like, you've got to let that human go. And the alien, but I love him. I don't want to let him go. It was stuck inside this dome. And then he goes, love, Captain Kirk says, love is sacrifice. If you truly love him, you will let him go so he can live a happy life and not trapped inside your dome or whatever. Something like that. So love is sacrifice. Love means being selfless. You give it up for the other person. That's what love is. And then I remember the alien cried, then she lifted her dome and let the guy go. Something like that. And I think that was the end of that episode. Do you remember the name of that episode?
I can't off the top of my head, but I do remember it. Yes.
Yeah, you could tell I'm a Trekkie. So yeah, that was one of my favorite episodes because I think I was little, and I remember asking my mother or my father, what is sacrifice, or what is it wasn't sacrifice, it was some other word that he used that I hadn't learned yet in my vocabulary. But then funny thing was, a couple of weeks later, our teacher, elementary school teacher, added that word into their vocabulary. It was just just by coincidence.
That's
Anyway, so yeah, I was in fourth grade. Now I remember, because that was the teacher that made us work hard and memorize things. And I did, at that age, I just wanted to go out and play. So yeah, that was the teacher that said, you've got to memorize this for the test. Okay, so because Mary is rich, John is poor. Sorry, I got to go back to because people tell me I ramble too much. So even though Mary is rich, John is poor. So all of this is a complex sentence, different ways of saying but. And then when you have a dependent clause at the beginning of the sentence, you need to place a comma. And then when the dependent clause comes at the end of the sentence, no comma. Which quiz did I teach you that with? That should sound very familiar. That should not be something
that
new.
was quiz. Let me see.
The
The second quiz?
Probably. It was the seventh quiz that I really rammed it in with sentence structure. But yeah, because I've taught it a million times, so I remember it. And so yeah, so by the time, so basically when you have, and then when is there an exception to the rule?
For punctuation?
Yeah, for this comma, for the punctuation of dependent clauses, there is an exception. There's a special kind of dependent clause in which you have to put two commas if that particular dependent clause comes at the beginning of the sentence, and then if that particular dependent clause comes at the end of the sentence, you use only one comma.
I was looking at. Let me see. I don't know if I have it in my notes. I got him right now.
It's when you have who, whom, which, that. If you have who, whom, which, that, then you have to have two commas. If this is at the beginning, if I say John, who is French, so the exception would be John, who is French, speaks French, or that sort of thing. Yeah, or John, who is, okay, that's a dumb sentence. But you get the idea, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, getting back to, so transition word practice. So let's practice. You're going to make different transition words based on what we just said, on all the different transition words that you learned. So some people are fat, some people are thin. So how are we going to say that and not using but?
Some people are fat, while others are thin.
Okay. And what about some people are tall, some people are short?
Some people are tall.
Compared to
some people are, no, that doesn't sound right. Some people are tall. And addition. What do I put for additions? Boy.
Yeah, you could use a transition word of addition. That's fine. Which transition word of addition do you want to use? Some people are tall, and then which transition word of addition would you add?
Additionally?
Additionally, okay. You could have in addition, moreover, furthermore. Some people are short. Some people are tall. In addition, some people are short. That sort of thing. Or some people are tall, however, some people are short. Either way works. What about adulthood is, childhood is? That means you got to add in an adjective too, besides adding in, so make a sentence that makes sense.
Adulthood is. Adulthood is challenging.
Okay.
While
childhood.
We used while already, so let's not use that again. You use that with some
okay.
people are fat and thin. So you got to
Yeah.
learn another way of saying it.
Yeah.
That's why you got to, I guess some of this requires some memorization. That's why at the very beginning I said that if you can't remember all of this, you could just memorize the four things that I yellowed in where is it? It's all the way up here. Not here, not here. Yeah, if you can't remember it, just remember those 4 things. Those are 4 different ways of saying but. And so if you can't remember all the different, because I gave so many, this is all meant to be a dictionary. So this way, while you're writing your paper, you can just look at this like a dictionary. Later on, this is supposed to be automatic. But I tell my other students that if you can't remember, just memorize these 4. You already know the while. So you just have, in your case, you just have to memorize 2, because everybody knows but, and you already know while. So you would memorize, in contrast to Mary's wealth, John is poor, and Mary is rich. However, John is poor. In your case, and then you got your 4, since you already know the but and the while. So that makes it 4. So that's okay. That's better than always somebody saying but. Then of course
I didn't want to use but.
well, you could use it once or twice within the whole essay, but then you would have to use this. In contrast to, conversely, on the other hand, similarly is the opposite. And so we're going to get away from but and for a while. Okay, so we did a lot of buts and ands, and we practiced this. Another kind of transition word is transition words of cause, condition, and purpose. These are simply different ways of saying if. So John always knows where the emergency exits are to leave the building. In case there is a fire, if there is a fire, so in case of, for the purpose of, in the event that there is a fire. So all of these are different ways of saying if. And also I will be sending out these lecture notes to you, so you're going to have a copy of it, okay? So that way you can look at it like a kind of, and then later, as you do more writing, all of this should be not memorized, but second nature. That's why the more you write, the more this becomes second nature, and then you don't have to look at this anymore. And the purpose of this is that you know it so well that it's like this. That's the purpose. It's not about, oh, I got to look it up again. Oh, I got to look it up again. Okay, that's such a pain in the neck. So I would rather just memorize it, or just know it. So as long as is another way of saying if. On the condition that if there is a fire, it is important for John to know where the emergency exits. So basically, it's the same sentence, but using different, in the hope that that's if, John can safely exit the building. John needs to know where the emergency exits are located. In order for John to safely exit the building, John needs to know where the emergency exits are located. In case there is a fire, John needs, so this actually needs to be bolded. So I guess I didn't bold that. Yeah, so, and then it goes like that. So all of this you can memorize, and these are all different, so you get it? All the different ways of saying if?
Yeah.
Yep. All right, and then different ways of emphasis. In other words, different ways of saying for example. So transition words of example, support, and emphasis. And so many people are not aware, this was written in 2020. So in 2020, I think I have to add this in. 2020. Yeah, now it's up to date. And then also I have got to, what else would I change to make this,
Ballot?
yeah. I'm almost telling you what it is by putting it there.
Comma.
No.
No?
In 2020, many people were not aware of the seriousness of COVID-19. For example, students at USC were caught having large parties, not wearing masks or social distancing. This means I have to redo all of this to look like this. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's for example, in other words, to put it different. So different ways of saying for example. All right, so in other words, to put it differently, as an illustration, to put it another way, for this reason, for instance, in fact, okay? And I will change this later. As a matter of fact, students at USC were caught having large parties, not wearing masks or social distancing. Wow, this all seems so dated, doesn't it? It's like we've gone through, normally in a normal, in my normal whatever, if 2 or 3 years go by, my notes do not age that much, because especially if I'm teaching something like grammar usually stays the same. But if I start using current events And the last 3 years has been crazy. Then everything, starts to look, I'll fix this later. And so transition words of effect, consequence, and result. This is many different ways of saying so, you see. So instead of saying, John, many people think COVID-19 is a hoax. So people do not wear masks and do not social distance in public, resulting in more COVID-19 outbreaks and deaths. Once again, I have to put in 2020. All of this has to be changed to in 2020. So by the time you get the lecture notes, this will have been all corrected, you see. So you get to see it. So even I have to do some changing, you see. Not just you have to revise things, I have to revise things. But the only thing that doesn't change is the fact that there are many different ways of saying so. You can have therefore, as a result, under those circumstances, in that case, for this reason, then, consequently, hence, accordingly, and stuff like that. These are all different ways of saying so. And so that doesn't change. The fact that I use an example, it's true. In 2020, many people thought, see, when you write in the past, then all of your verbs have to be verb tense consistent. Then everything switches into the past. Many people thought COVID-19 was a hoax. Therefore, people did not wear masks and did not social distance, resulting in more, that's the only part that stays the same, resulting in more COVID-19 outbreaks and deaths. So you get to see, you'll be the first generation student to see the updated, ooh, isn't that exciting? It's like nobody cares, so that kind of stuff. So that's how come, probably why I didn't fix it, because it's got such a low students, like when people write about my class, no one commented on, your lectures are a little out of date. Nobody mentioned that. So if nobody mentions that in the end of class survey, I don't remember to change it, you see. So you got to remember to remind me. In that case, for this reason, so, although by now, by the time you do it, I will have done this. Will have done this. So that is the future perfect. Will have done. Whenever you have, I'll do something verb tense later, but that's the perfect tense. Any kind of perfect tense, you always have one thing in the past before. I was just doing a verb tense lecture. It's still, that was the last class I was doing. So then you have transition words of conclusion, summary, and restatement. And so these transition words conclude, summarize, and restate ideas or indicate a final general statement. And so usually we use transition words of conclusion at the very last sentence of a paragraph or in our conclusion paragraph. So those are the places where we put transition words of conclusion. So you would say, to conclude, people need to take COVID-19 seriously to prevent future outbreaks. Can you tell in what year these notes were created?
3 years ago.
Correct. 2020. I would say July of 2020. I think I wrote most of this up. In the final, and so all of these are different ways of saying, to conclude. So in the final analysis, in closing, to summarize, as can be seen above, given these points, in the long run, as has been noted, in conclusion, and in short. And so I could write, to conclude, COVID-19 is no longer as much a threat because now we have vaccines. Is that a good one? What do you think? For now? So something like that. So I'll change to one sentence. Given these points, so all of these mean in conclusion. So those are all known as transition words of conclusion, summary, or restatement. So I will change the sentence, but I'm not going to. And transition, I think at one point I did try to change this. And then you have transition words of time, chronology, sequence. At the present time, we have 3 vaccines for COVID-19. I must have changed this while I was talking to one of the students like you. And I must have had, at the present time, we have no vaccines for COVID-19. I believe that's what the original sentence was. And then I remember looking at the student going, oh wow, this is too old. So I did change one little thing. So that's the only thing that's been updated. From time to time, hoax cures appear for, no one even cares about COVID-19 anymore. But anyway, from time to time, sooner or later, we will have herd immunity. In due time, we will have everyone vaccinated. I would say that this is a little later. I wrote this one because we will have everyone vaccinated. Anyway, so all of this all deal with time. So when you have adverb clauses, these are also known as adverb clauses of time. And these are also known as adverb clauses of summary and restatement. So that's another way of saying transition words, is you have conjunctive adverbs and adverb clauses. So all your books, grammar books, have different ways of saying that. So you can, and then how can we use transition words to transition from one paragraph to the other? And so I already went over pie structure, so I'm not going to go over that again. We have the main point from the thesis, your in-text citation, and your explanation. Here is an example of a pie structure. So here you have your thesis statement. Smoking causes lung cancer, throat cancer, and stomach cancer. First, smoking causes lung cancer. So you notice that's the first sentence taken from the thesis statement. Then you have your in-text citation. 70% of smokers who start smoking young end up dying of lung cancer. Then you've got to put in your date, your author name, date, page number. Dr. Smith, then you write in your 5 sentences that talk about all these young smokers dying young of lung cancer. So then you write, Dr. Smith explains that if as a teenager a person starts smoking due to peer pressure, a person has a higher chance of dying of lung cancer. Dr. Smith claims that the majority of lung cancer deaths can be avoided if people do not start smoking, or if people politely refuse a cigarette that's offered to them. In addition, lung cancer is not the only cancer. Okay, so now I'm going to start to pivot into my next paragraph. And so that's another purpose of your conclusion sentence, is that you are going to start pivoting to your next paragraph. So the next paragraph is going to talk about throat cancer, because that's the next thing on the thesis list. So in addition to lung cancer, people can get, people can get throat cancer, as you see. So basically, by the time you get to your conclusion paragraph, you pivot to the next paragraph. So besides lung cancer, people can also get throat cancer. Then your next paragraph becomes second. Besides lung cancer, smoking causes throat cancer. Okay, so now I've smoothly transitioned, and I use transition words to transition myself from one paragraph to another. And then here I have throat cancer is a common ailment found among heavy smokers. And then here you have your P, paragraph from the main thesis statement. I, you've got your in-text citation. Throat cancer is a common ailment among heavy smokers. Smith 2020-22. So that's E. That's I for in-text citation, and E for explanation. Dr. Smith claims that throat cancer is prevalent among heavy smokers because the nicotine in the smoke damages the throat muscles. Betty ended up with throat cancer. Smoking destroyed her throat so badly that to breathe, she now has to breathe through a tube. Dr. Smith treats patients like Betty all the time, and he warns young people not to take up smoking, and he warns adults to quit smoking as soon as possible. Here, there are 2 ands. What could I do to make this sentence better, based on what you just learned?
Okay.
See.
Dr. Smith treats patient.
One thing for sure, we'll get rid of and.
Yeah.
So what am I going to put instead?
Okay,
Because he's gonna do it.
Wow.
Okay. So let me see. At the meantime, not at the meantime. At the same time.
Okay.
No.
That's
because
good.
you have time.
You can use that. You can use any of the similarity ones, the transition words of similarity, or you could use moreover. Either one. Any of the transition words of addition. Any of those words would fit. So you would, or similarity. At the same time, did I write similarity? Right, similarity. he warns young people not to take up smoking. All right, so that's good. And then what do I put here instead of another and? What other transition word of addition? So that's easy to remember. Addition and, transition word of addition, different ways of saying and. So just pick any one of the transition words of addition.
However?
That's not addition. That's opposition and contrast.
Okay.
We're not replacing but, we're replacing and. Any one of them would work.
I need to read that. I need to pull up the.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you would have to go back, and it could be either in addition, moreover. No, I already used moreover, so you could use furthermore.
Furthermore. Okay.
He warns adults to quit smoking. What do I mean by quick smoking? Quit smoking. To quit smoking as soon as possible. Finally, the last kind of cancer a person can get from smoking is stomach cancer. And so here I used my transition word of restatement and summary in the last conclusion paragraph so that you can pivot over into the next paragraph. So third, the most serious kind of cancer you get from smoking is stomach cancer. And so I didn't write out the whole fourth paragraph, but you get the idea of how to do this, right? And you can always, any kind of and, you can write in any of the transition words of addition, any kind of but, you can add in any of the transition words of opposition, any kind of so, you can have transition words of sequence. That's why I went over, that's what I meant by so and but. So when you practice, and that means that you can, it's okay if you write out your sentences like in a rush and you have and but. Then the last stage of revision, then you go look it up and go, oh, I've got too many ands. Okay, let me fix it and put some in addition and that sort of thing. So that's actually the very last step of your, after you make sure it's good essay structure, then you do that kind of stuff. Then you have to have your reference citation has to have the author, last name, first name, date, the name of the article italicized. Then you have where did you get it from, either the website name or the journal name, the edition, the page number. So that's the publication. Retrieved. Today is March. Wow, it's March already? March 1st, 2023 from www. Everybody gets this part right because usually people just send me a web address and say, here, that's where I got it from. And then they're usually missing the rest of this. So I usually don't have to go over that part. Everybody knows that part. So this would be your references, which is on the last page of your paper, you see. And so that's it. And then you have your week 9. And your week 9, this is going to be your structure for week 9. So in week 9 forum, you're going to write a persuasive essay. So in the persuasive essay, you're trying to convince your audience of an idea or argument. And so in the introduction, you also do this for your comparison, contrast, all of your essays. Regardless of what kind of essay you're writing, you always have to have a hook. 5 background sentences which give context to your argument or familiarize the reader with the content. Then you define anything that you think is, well, I don't know, dog versus cats. For our purposes, persuasive. So you can also find topics for your persuasive for week 9 essay in the procon.org website. Okay, so procon.org, and then you can find any topic you want to talk about. And then each body paragraph has to have a topic sentence, evidence, that's your supporting sentence, and analysis. Well, that's the same thing as your evidence. And then your conclusion would be you briefly sum up the main point. That's your thesis statement as the first sentence. And then you have your summary. And bonus, you give the reader food for thought. So this is how your essay will look. You have your thesis, then you have reason 1 or topic 1. It has it on those columns. Evidence, evidence, evidence. So that's basically how we build an essay in English. It's different in other languages, by the way. And here are some examples that I'm not going to read over. You can look it over when I give you the notes. This has not changed, so this I don't have to change. See how she uses first, second, third, finally. So people actually do get that very quickly. It's very difficult for them to get the other stuff, such as, I think I have people making mistakes with, so he wrote, the average American spends about $1,200 a month on prescription drugs. And if the person has cancer, that cost can go up to $10,000. Then this person had no in-text citation. I tell students, anytime you have any kind of medical fact, numbers, dollars, anything with numbers, you have to cite the source, because you have to figure out who gave those numbers, who did the research for those numbers. So any kind of numbers. The cost of medical marijuana is between $200 and $400 a month. And once again, who did the research for that? So you need author and date. And also she used too many quotes in one sentence. Here you have studies from marijuana.org. So she originally didn't have 2020, shows that marijuana can cause, this is all medical facts. So any kind of medical fact, you also have to put into, cite it. And then also whenever they say researchers claim, or these studies claim, then I'm like, which studies, which researchers, which doctors? So you have to be, so students write that all the time, and then I always have to take points off. According to who says marijuana is less addictive? Where are your sources? This is the problem with Wikipedia. Wikipedia lacks in-text citations. So that means that I can write whatever I want. I can say the human race started on Mars, and that there are aliens living on the dark side of the moon. If I don't have something to back that up, I can just make whatever I want in my head, okay? And some people will actually believe that's true. So that's how gullible people are. So, there was a radio show where I think it was Oscar Welles, Orson Welles did a radio show where he told everyone that people from Mars had landed in the middle of America, and he made it sound so real, like a newscast, that everybody panicking, running out of their houses. And then later he had to apologize and say it was just a show. I was just doing a show. I don't think people thought that was very funny, especially people who actually were scared. This was in the 1930s, I think it was. So that proves to you people are very gullible if you're persuasive enough. Here are some examples of persuasive topics. Should people be required to be, this is so old, I have to get rid of that. Did the game of, here, so are the Harry Potter books more popular than they deserve to be? Should music with offensive language come with a warning label? What's the best ways for museums to get more people to visit? And then you have economic, you have, is Biden responsible for our current inflation problem? Okay, that's still, I have to always look at this, and then I can add more in. And then once it becomes an election year, 2024, oh, that's fun. Then I can have so many, can so-and-so be president? Why can't so-and-so be president? And stuff like that. During an election year, I remember in 2016, I had different students pitch for different, candidates. So one person said, oh, candidate X is a great candidate because blah, 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 that sort of thing. So it was fun when you have is it possible to achieve the American dream, or is it only a myth? So the answer to these questions becomes your thesis statement. So you would answer the question, Biden is responsible for our current inflation problem because. So when you answer the question, you're creating the thesis statement. People in higher incomes do pay more taxes because. So all you do is you flip this around and then you write because. And that becomes, then you have topic, opinion, reason. Should the United States impose more or fewer tariffs, say, to China? And then you would say, that's how I would make this more current events. United States should impose more tariffs to China, or that sort of thing. So whatever you decide to, education and ethics, should books be banned? Are book bans necessary, or are they censorship? Then you would say, book bans are not ethical because, or book bans are necessary to protect our children from, or whatever. Okay, so all of these are about ethics. And then here you have politics. Oh, look how old this is. Did President Biden do a good job evacuating Americans from Afghanistan? Well, this takes me to August of, was it 2022? It's a little bit recent.
Yeah,
that was not
So I could tell this is August. Was the evacuation from Afghanistan a graceful exit of American military forces? Not if you leave all your weapons behind and stuff. But anyway, did Putin invade Ukraine because he perceives Biden as a weak president? Is this a true or false statement? So that could be Putin invaded Ukraine because he perceived Biden as a weak president. Because so you can answer, or Putin did not invade Ukraine, had nothing to do with Biden because he just wanted the Soviet Union to be as strong as it used to be. Okay, something like that. So either way, it doesn't matter. I have relatives around the country, not around the country, around the world. How is Biden seen around the world? Is he seen as a weak or strong president? You see, so Biden is seen around the world as either a weak or strong president. Okay, so you can actually, who did a better job handling COVID-19, Trump or Biden? And so you could also whatever. Okay, so that's the answer to that question becomes your thesis statement. Here's more stuff on health, on history, on science. Here's an old one. Should Pfizer and Moderna make available their COVID-19 formula so that even poor countries can have access to their? Oh, that's actually still current. They refuse. They refuse to do that. But what is it? COVAX wants everybody to have access so everyone could get vaccinated. That's still. I hear that it would take 5 more years to get the whole world just for the original vaccine vaccinated. 5 more years, so that the poorest of the poor get vaccinated. Anyway, so should fracking be legal? Then you would say fracking should be made legal so that America could be energy independent. That's what Trump wanted. And then Biden is like, no, it should not be legal because it's environmentally unsafe. So once again, you get to choose. So when you write your persuasive essay, you take a position and then you defend that position with credible evidence from your body paragraphs. Is there legitimate evidence of extraterrestrial life? And I had a student write yes. That was a very interesting essay. Yes, there is extraterrestrial life. So a student wrote about Mars, about bacteria or something that was found in Mars water. Anyway, so you could find a lot of stuff on procon.org, and that's it. I will go over the week 10 lecture. The week 10 lecture has to do with APA. You have to know the difference between a direct quote, paraphrase quote. You have to know how to do a credible evidence. This is why I said that week 9 and 10 have nothing to do with your essay 2. Okay, it's like you take a break. So 9 and 10 break, and then we'll go back to 11 and 12, and then you're done with the class. So actually, week 10 is really hard for most students. Once students get over the hurdle of week 10, the rest of it is really easy, and then everyone could just sit back, relax, and be looking at their next class after this. And in this school, this is the only English class you guys take, right? Yeah. My other school, the other school, the English class is only like 6 weeks. So you take 2 classes, which equals your 12-week class, right? So because this is so long, then it's like 2 classes. It's like you're taking 2 classes, is basically how other schools are, because it's required. Everybody has to take 12 weeks or so. And so you either take it as 2 6-week classes or 1 12-week class. So it depends on how your university, because you guys are all nursing students, they made it all 12 weeks because your nursing classes are all so long. And this is going to be a preview for your week 9 and 10 lecture. And that's about it. So, did you learn a lot about transition words this week?
Yes. I need to. Whenever you send that over, I'll I won't send it today. I'll send it tomorrow.
Oh, I'm right after this lecture. I will just as soon as I finish saying in 2020, people thought that COVID-19 was, and I change all that over to something more modern because a lot of it is still like from 2020, because I think originally I wrote this in July of 2020 because that was the first time I created this lecture. And so when I first created this lecture, and you could tell that at different times I changed it here and there, like the Afghanistan. I put something in there because I was talking to a student. I go, oh, that's so old. So that while talking to the student, I fixed it. Then I forgot about it. And that's why you have little bits fixed, little bits not fixed. So this part of the lecture, I think I will delete. That's not necessary for them to know. Anyway, so do you have any other questions?
No.
I bought this book too.
Oh yes, that is the book that tells you everything about APA. That's all the books, all the English books. They base their APA on that book because that's the book everybody else, like Hacker, Langen, or whatever the name of your English book is. I think Langen for this school. I'm mixing up the schools, okay? I'm mixing up my different schools, but everybody, just to say it, everybody bases it on APA on that book. So that is the book for, and I tell my students from my other class, my other school, www.apa.org, and then you can buy the 7th or 8th edition, I forget which one, from that website, and that's the book for APA. So that's important for people to know, that's where you get the book. So if you have no more questions,
sorry, I do have
okay,
one, because when I was writing it, so for my case, it was Star Wars and Star Trek. Do I need to italicize since they're I don't know if they can be considered titles or something?
they're considered titles. So you would have to italicize. Star Trek italicize. It's better than Star Wars italicize. Yes. Anything else?
Okay.
Nope, that's it. So I'll see you next week, and I'm going to go over how to do the week 10 worksheet. So so I'll see you next week then. Wow, you guys are getting right down to the wire, and then you'll be done with this class, and that's it. Okay, so I'll see you next week. Okay.
Bien,
Okay.